You are listening to a podcast series, Asking Soulful Questions, by Sacred Art of Living. To learn more, visit sacredartofliving.org. Today's podcast is a part of a series called The Question of Belief.
Hi, everyone. My name is Daryl Williams, and today I'm talking with you from my home near Phoenix, Arizona. You know, it's been my experience that in many families, there's a big generational difference about questions like what gives meaning to life or what people deeply believe. Not so long ago, it seemed like people didn't make much distinction between things like spirituality or religion, but I know that shifted for a lot of folks. A lot of people I know say they consider themselves to be spiritual, but not necessarily religious. So I'm really excited and looking forward to today's conversation with 4 generations of people from the same family who are in our studio in Bend, Oregon. Richard Groves is a 73-year-old great-grandfather and the current director of the Sacred Art of Living Center. His grandson, James Richter, is 37, a husband, father, and nurse at the local hospital. Sarah Richter is 42. She is married to James and the mother of 3. She is also a nurse working at a local hospice house. Madeleine Richter is 20 years old and the oldest daughter of James and Sarah. And finally, behind the camera is Richard's stepson, Joe, who is age 60 and the producer of this podcast series. And there he is. Say hi, Joe.
Hello.
So welcome, everyone. And I guess we're not expecting any of you to speak for your entire generation, right? This is a conversation about you and what these questions bring up in you and your process. So today, I think I'll begin with you, Richard, because I know you had a lot to do with inviting the whole clan here. So kick it off for us.
All right. Thank you, Daryl. Yeah, this is, first of all, I just think it's amazingly cool to have a family together like this. We come together a lot for holidays and birthdays, and we have informal conversations about stuff. But to come together in an intentional way, I think is hopefully going to be inviting other families into a similar conversation. I got a feeling these topics are happening all over the place. And so I'm just grateful to my family for being here. And I'm going to start off by turning to James first, because I think ever since, I don't know, you maybe 9 or 10 years old, we used to hang out in the summertime and travel, and you came to a lot of our programs. And so the term soul-sized questions, I'm just going to start there as a generational question. I know what I think of when I think of the term soul, and I wonder how that term speaks to you.
Well, when you bring it up, when I think about soul-sized questions, I don't know. When you first brought it up, my mind went directly to Dan Brown's book, The Lost Symbol. And there was a piece in there that talked about them doing scientific experiments, and when a person dies and the tiny fraction of the person's weight drops a little bit. And I guess when I think about like a soul-sized question, I'm thinking about this being like some very, like tiny piece of who you are, but how significant it can be in your life, I guess. So
wow, that's great, because back when I was even your age, I don't think I would have identified soul and science at all, either in literature or movies. And here you're making that association. So yeah.
And you introduced me to those, Dan Brown, and like some of the aspects of religion and science and all of that he brings into his book. So it's been fun.
Yeah. Very cool.
Right. James, did you come from a particularly religious background, and how does that shape what you think about soul?
I did. Was raised Catholic. Parents were Catholic. And I don't know if I really have very much of a connection with the word soul. And I guess it was like, I guess when I think about it, there's part of it is more of it was a deeper part of you than what your body, than your outer body was. I guess I don't know how much more to say about that part.
Well, Sarah, what are you thinking?
If we're talking about soul, I think for me, I don't have as much of a connection with it. I grew up in, I guess, a Christian household, non-denominational. We kind of church hopped and things like that. And I never was very religious, even as a kid. I was kind of the kid that got in trouble in Sunday school for asking the wrong question. They're like, shut up, don't ask us that.
Yeah.
And always had a harder time with it. When I think of soul now, I'm starting to become more of a spiritual person. I think as I get older, as I've done some different self-work and things like that, and now it's not as charged for me. Religion and religious terms used to make me feel really angry, and sometimes I still do a little bit.
Yeah.
Words like soul kind of pissed me off, but now I think of it more as just that piece of you that's left when the rest of you's gone, you know, when your body's gone, when your brain is gone, some piece of something that exists in whatever form it does. I think of soul in that way now. So.
And Elaine, let's get your generation. Not your generation, but your take at your age.
Well, it's interesting because I feel like my generation is filled with a lot of interesting takes on spirituality because religion has been done for so long, and we're just starting to see it from a wider lens. And I think that spirituality in my generation can kind of be bogged down with like a lot of pseudoscience and a lot of things that don't really matter. I feel like for me, spirituality has always been interesting because, like my mom said, it kind of brought anger to her when she would like hear about religion and stuff like that. And I definitely felt that as a kid, and so I would, with my religious friends, just make not mean comments, but just comments that they didn't want to hear. Like comments were like, well, what about this? And what if this? And just wasn't very sensitive to religion. And now I'm starting to realize there are good and bad parts of religion, and that's just the way it is with anything, and it all is about how you use it, and the same goes for spirituality. And I'm starting to think that maybe I used to think that it was more of a strong thing to not be spiritual, and because I'm an atheist, and so I'm just like, once you die, you're worm food. Like that's what.
Yeah.
I used to think, like, find some solace in that, just like thinking that it was all just gonna kind of come to a nice closing, and that like it was a stronger viewpoint to think about things like that. But I'm starting to think that maybe, you know, there's strength in believing in things and being faithful. And
well, do you and your friends ever talk about things like that? You mentioned some, you grew up with kids who were maybe more religious than you. Did you ever have conversations about that? Or is that, that's not something we talk about?
not full-on conversations, but we would skim kind of. Like, I had a lot of Mormon friends for some reason. There was a lot of Mormon people who went to my high school. And there were some Mormons that were like more open about their faith than others. And with them, I would ask more questions and be like, you know what, I don't want to be offensive, but I genuinely want to know, like, what is your take on this? And what do you think about this? Because to me, religion had been kind of a mystifying thing because I couldn't imagine putting myself in their shoes and just having grown up being like, yes, this is fact and this is what life is.
I'm kind of curious, if you don't mind me asking, what is your take on soul?
On soul?
Yeah, the word soul size questions, and
that's really hard because I've tried to figure out. I used to watch YouTube videos and like, what is the soul? Because I wanted to know. I still don't really know because I feel like I think about things from a pretty scientific standpoint. So I wanted to find a scientific answer for the soul. And then I realized there is no scientific, like this part of your, like in this humerus lies the soul. So I just was like, well, maybe the soul doesn't exist. And then as I like kind of have gone through life, I've been like, no, there's definitely something more to humans. And I do believe in a soul, and I just don't really, I like am agnostic about souls. I know it's there, but I can't describe it. I don't know what it is. I don't know how it is, but I believe it's present.
So interesting because, first of all, when I'm listening to Sarah and Madeleine, I'm thinking of is it the Big Bang Theory, Sheldon?
Yeah.
I thought about both you guys in terms of being the one who would ask the questions that nobody's supposed to ask. And in my generation, a big part of what I'm noticing in our work here at Sacred Art of Living is helping people in my generation in some ways recover from religion. I hear a lot of people have been wounded by it. A lot of people are trying to leave aspects of it behind that maybe were guilt producing and not helpful. And yet when they strip it away, they very often find there's still something in there that they're searching to name. And I'm finding that there's a kind of a whole gathering of people in my generation who are trying to name that. And what I'm hearing here for the first time, honestly, that I've heard you guys explain it, which I really appreciate, Madeleine, especially your comments, is almost the opposite. If you weren't raised in an indoctrinated formal tradition, then how do you come to belief and soul and those questions? Well, you're going to search, you're going to go to YouTube, you're going to talk to friends, and maybe from both sides, the same quest is there inside of us, but it shows up differently.
Yeah, I agree.
I wonder, Sarah, maybe you or James can answer this, because it seems to me, like in my experience, I grew up in the church and then walked away from it for a number of years. And my spiritual path really restarted after I had some setbacks in life, like things that didn't work out the way I'd hoped. And all of a sudden I'm like, geez, I thought it was supposed to be like this, and it's not like that at all. And now what the hell, what does my life mean if all these things that everybody said was going to make me successful don't make me feel that way? What is there?
I mean, I might be going in a different direction than what you're saying, but and if I'm on the wrong track with what you're saying,
there's no wrong track. Just what you got. Yeah.
I guess some of the stuff that I'm thinking about, like when you're talking about some of this, is, I know I've already mentioned I was raised Catholic, and I got to a certain point with the church where I was really just tired of it, and I think I had a lot of questions that just it didn't feel right. And I feel like the church was going in a direction also of like telling you how to live your life. How things just felt very black and white, right and wrong. And I didn't care for that. And as an adult though, I still carried a lot of those, I don't want to say beliefs, but like maybe those kind of, even some of those wounds in a way. Like I felt black and white or right and wrong with my thinking. And I've had a lot of trouble with shame around a lot of that.
Yeah.
I've been really, really hard on myself.
Yeah.
And recently, just with a lot of my own personal work, Enneagram work, therapies. I have been slowly kind of working in a direction of searching for something a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that has been within, I've been starting to get a little bit more into joining a men's group here in Bend. And actually, it's kind of funny. It's involves some guys who've done some of the men's rites of passage, and trying to, I guess, just find community that shares some similar thoughts and feelings about life today. And
Mhm.
I still even have to be, you know, religious oriented. And
Yeah.
one of the things that's been great about it, though. So
I think that was right on to what I was asking. So I think what I was asking for is it doesn't have to be in a framework. Sometimes it's just a belief system, right? It's just what makes it easier for us to deal with what life throws at us, right? So what kind of framework is it that allows for that?
Sarah, you know, you work in hospice, you work in the hospice house, so you really depend into people who are faced with mortality and illness, and I suppose in some cases crisis, not just for them, but maybe for their families. And I wonder if in your observation or experience, you resonate at all with this idea that maybe when we are in crisis, that puts us up against what we believe, not making us religious necessarily, but maybe there's some soul searching that goes on in that place.
I think there's a lot of soul searching that goes on in that place. I mean, I see people who have lived all sorts of different ways, that they die in all sorts of different ways. And, you know, a lot of the times we say that people die the way that they lived, you know, you go through the process kind of the way that you lived. And it's hard for me. I don't have a specific belief system. I see people come in with specific belief systems, and sometimes that's really a hindrance because people are worried that they didn't live up to their belief system. And so we get people who die really terrified that they're going to hell because they ate, I don't know what you're not supposed to eat, pork on Sunday or something. I don't know, you know, whatever it is, they did it one time and they're going to hell and that's it, you know. And people get really terrified around those things. And so I feel like having a belief system isn't necessarily a good thing. I think that having ideas about how to live your life and how to be a good person is a good thing. And I think we need to do that not because of the threat of hell or the promise of heaven, but because it's just the right thing to do, you know. I think getting too entrenched in any one belief system or dogma, to me, seems like it holds people here at the end because they're so worried about it. You know, you do get people that are really religious and die peacefully and beautifully and that whole thing, but at the same time we get people who are really just terrified that they're going to hell, and they, you know, they did something in their past that they don't think they'll be forgiven for, and that's really hard to watch. I just think having an idea is better than having a belief. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding here. It feels like across generations there's some resonance with this. And I just wanted to share something. We had an interview in here in this studio a few weeks ago with a man who's a Native American elder, a shaman from our local reservation, and said something that I really appreciated, and it really stuck with me as somebody who's older, the oldest among you guys. And he said, maybe it somehow is a fitting thought here. He says, you know, I think people should consider the advice of their elders, not because their elders are always right, but because of the wisdom they've gleaned from being wrong. sometimes maybe in terms of religion and age and perspective, there was something there worth considering.
I kind of
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
I kind of love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a really great spot to end this first episode, and look forward to carrying on in a couple more, because I think this group has a lot to share, and we look forward to continuing this discussion later.
We would like to thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Question of Belief. For more information about our entire podcast library, Asking Soulful Questions, visit our website at sacredartofliving.org.